Having a healthy heart and liver are going to make you feel great, but let's face it, it's what's on the outside that counts, at least to some extent. This is especially true when it comes to your hair, and not only do people respond better to someone with a full head of hair that's youthfully colored, but people can get violently angry when their hair is not looking its best.
It was just a trim, what's all the fuss about?
It was a mullet.
The mullet is a classic cut.
On a 68-year-old sailor.
I thought it'd be a nice little surprise for him, you know? He wakes up in the morning, goes for a morning tinkle, catches sight of himself. Whoa, look at me!
It was a surprise. He went mental. He was like Ahab.
Dear God, give the ball guy a break. Amen. I have hair. I have hair!
Like toothpaste, shampoo is full of an endless list of harmful chemicals. This is one of the main reasons we go gray, because chemicals like sulfates that also exist in air pollution cause cells to become metabolically deranged. This includes the all-important stem cells, which as you will see later are extremely important for preventing both gray hair and hair loss. I'm planning to make a video on homemade shampoo once I get a formula I like, but suffice to say that it will probably be similar to my homemade toothpaste video. In fact, I rub a bit of that stuff in my hair on any areas where I get a bump or a spot. In addition, it will probably have castor oil in there because this is also very good for your hair, and I've been a castor oil enthusiast for a long time. But what actually makes hair gray in the first place? Catalase often takes the blame for gray hair. This is an antioxidant enzyme that neutralizes hydrogen peroxide that is generated in the body as it produces ATP. Catalase production falls as we age, and hydrogen peroxide tends to rise as we age, so it's logical to think that the issue is catalase and it could help with graying. The problem is, this doesn't address the root cause of hydrogen peroxide production within our cells. The main cause is carbohydrate metabolism within your mitochondria. This creates a minimum of 66% more reactive oxygen species production in the body as compared to burning fat, and this is synonymous with hydrogen peroxide. This happens because carb burning within mitochondria starts in mitochondrial complex 1, which tends to create extra reactive oxygen species, and additionally does not fuel the cleanup process of cellular metabolism at all. When you enter this cycle at any other point, it actually creates extra ATP, which are then used in complex 4, which is the cleanup phase of energy production in mitochondria, where most ROS is cleaned up before it even leaves the mitochondria, let alone before it can damage your hair. When the body burns fat, which is the main energy source of the body except during intense exercise, extra ATP are generated to clean this process up before it can cause problems within the rest of the cell by releasing ROS. These ROS damage DNA, cause cancer, and destroy collagen and elastin, and do many other awful things in the body. And they damage the mitochondria themselves, which is one of the most important issues. On top of all this, they also directly bleach your hair follicles. When your cells are insulin resistant or have unhealthy mitochondria, they also fail to burn fat. Only healthy mitochondria can burn fat properly, and this process also requires oxygen. When cells have a lowered ability to metabolize fat for energy, they are metabolically deranged. This comes from the diet, safe and effective medications, chemotherapy, and many of the endless chemicals in the environment, and in our food and in our grooming supplies that we use on a daily basis, such as toothpaste and shampoo. This includes sulfates and also nanoparticles, which are in more things than you realize. While there are small amounts of catalase in some vegetables, in reality this is just a band-aid on top of the more serious problem of carb burning. Not only do you produce far more ROS on a carb-rich diet, but a keto diet is shown to produce more than twice the glutathione as the standard American diet, let alone a vegan diet, which is going to be even worse because it's low in methionine. Supplements like taurine, glycine, and L-cysteine will increase this even higher, while simultaneously reducing homocysteine in the body. It is actually glutathione that is the master antioxidant of the body, and it is far more important than catalase for cleaning up reactive oxygen species. If you eat a low animal protein diet, then you're bound to be low in glutathione, as methionine is required by the body to make glutathione. So don't fall for the usual tripe that eating veggies is the answer. This will have limited benefits, if any at all, and it will steer you away from the animal products you need to consume to get the real nutrition you need to detoxify hydrogen peroxide within your cells, and to prevent it from even occurring in the first place. And just imagine what this does to your internal organs if it has this effect on your hair. In reality, while catalase levels do decline with age, this is just a small piece of the puzzle. The biggest problem as we age is that we have fewer and fewer viable stem cells over time. Each hair follicle has a pool of stem cells which are required to regenerate it periodically. These cells ensure both that the follicle can grow to its maximum size and that it's able to produce enough melanin to properly color the hair. Your hair and skin depend on cells called melanocytes to produce melanin, which is the pigmentation your body uses to give our skin and hair coloration. These cells are particularly vulnerable in follicles and easily exposed to the many damaging poisons around us. That is why it's critical to keep your stem cells healthy, as they are required to regenerate new melanocytes over time. They are also required to regenerate the follicle itself, and as they decay and reduce in number, the follicle shrinks. Thankfully, there are many things you can do to help keep these critical cells healthy. This includes supplements like methylene blue, phototherapy, fasting, a low-carb diet, and most of the supplements listed in the description will also help either directly or indirectly. Alpha-ketoglutarate is particularly helpful in this regard by directly protecting stem cells. Mitochondrial health tends to drive stem cell health, and is why many of the other supplements like taurine and glycine are very helpful for this purpose. And if you have enough glycine and taurine in the body, it's going to have a dramatic effect on your mitochondria over time, and at least preventing further damage. In addition to creating excessive ROS that bleach your hair, a bad diet full of carbs, especially processed carbs, also destroys your stem cells over time. This, perhaps more than anything else, is what drives the aging process to its ultimate conclusion. This is devastating for the immune system over time, which heavily depends on stem cells for regeneration. It's also very bad for hair follicles and melanocytes, which become damaged very easily being very close to the surface, even more so than in skin cells. ROS damage mitochondria and stem cells by harming their delicate mitochondrial DNA, which is more delicate than the nucleus because it only has one copy of each gene. This is one way that a high-carb diet damages your stem cells, but it's not the worst one. The worst one is through excessive, prolonged cortisol release. Cortisol is a hormone that acts as a counterbalance to insulin in the body, and they work at cross purposes. One attempts to store glucose as fat in the body, and the other attempts to create more glucose. Generally, it is meant to be elevated only for short periods and only when insulin is low in the body and growth hormone is high in the body. Whenever insulin spikes, a small cortisol response occurs. That's because insulin lowers blood sugar and cortisol is called upon to raise it back up if it goes a bit low. While cortisol does go up while you're fasting and sometimes when you're eating a low-carb diet, there's plenty of glycerol split off from triglycerides from fat burning during this time, and that is also going to be used for creating glucose. In fact, that's the main source. The problem is glycine can also be used, and when you have chronically elevated cortisol, you're just not going to have that fat burning going on to the same degree, and you're going to need to produce more and more sugar, and this means that it's going to attack the body itself, and it's going to attack the collagen in the body to get at that glycine and free it up in order to use it for creating glucose. It also does that with elastin too, and this has a terrible effect on your skin and organs. As both cortisol and insulin rise and become chronically elevated from a bad diet that constantly spikes insulin, this causes catabolism in the body over time, especially of collagen and elastin, which are used to make the sugar out of the glycine that's within them. This also makes you constantly hungry as your blood sugar is rising and falling, and it makes you catabolic very quickly when you have not eaten when you get into this state. When you have a good diet and you are healthy, the body quickly and easily burns fat, and cortisol is high only after very prolonged periods of fasting. This keeps the body from being constantly damaged in this manner, but if you have it high all the time, then you're going to get hypercortisolism symptoms, which are very, very bad, and that includes this distended belly and withered limbs and no muscle. Even worse, high cortisol causes the release of stem cells, and that sounds like a good thing, but in this case it's not. This is fine when you're fasting because your growth hormone levels skyrocket, which helps ensure all the stem cells released are replaced by new stem cells. Replacement stem cells are supposed to be generated every time they're deployed, but this process relies on growth hormone to function optimally, and when stem cells lose their stemness or have damaged mitochondria, this process often fails. Fasting can also help maintain the stemness of cells and even lengthen their telomeres, and this is going to allow them to keep on replicating forever and ever. And the supplement alpha-ketoglutarate is also very helpful in this regard. On the surface, hair loss and graying issues may seem separate and simple, but in reality they're both intertwined with both each other and your mitochondrial and stem cell health. Diet, lifestyle, and supplements can all help here. So what can we do about it? First off, try to limit carbs and add in some fasting. Your metabolic health dictates how much ROS your body generates, and this will also lower your cortisol over time, which will prevent further damage to your precious and much overworked stem cells. And some vinegar can also help here because it can help rescue these damaged stem cells. Castor oil is also very beneficial for the hair because it stimulates prostaglandin EP4. This receptor has a wide variety of anti-inflammatory effects and is associated with lessened chances of bowel and breast cancer, as well as hair growth and insulin sensitivity. It simultaneously increases blood flow while impeding tumor growth genes, and it does much more on top of all this. I've meant to talk about castor oil for some time, but I've never gotten around to making a video on it. I have a bald spot that I have had since childhood and found that castor oil actually made some new small hairs appear in it, but unfortunately it never went beyond that stage into full-sized follicles, and apparently this is pretty common when you use the stuff, so don't think it's going to cure your baldness, but it may slow down the process. Phototherapy also helps not just with hair loss, but also with stem cells in general.
Now the mechanisms, there's quite a few different mechanisms. The main mechanism revolves around the mitochondria. So the cytochrome C oxidase, which is unit 4 in the mitochondrial respiratory chain, is accepted as a chromophore for red and near-infrared light. And the idea is that you get more oxygen consumption, more ATP, the mitochondrial membrane potential goes up. Other things happen, but one important thing is that the mitochondrial metabolism switches from glycolysis back towards oxidative phosphorylation, which is important because it has a few effects on the whole metabolism. You get a lot of signaling happens based on this mitochondrial activity. You get nitric oxide released, you get ATP and cyclic AMP, you get a brief burst of reactive oxygen species. These activate transcription factors, so June-Phos is AP1, I-kappa B allows NF-kappa B to go to the nucleus, and these transcription factors can trigger the expression of over 100 different genes, which is a long-lasting effect. So these proteins that are triggered by these transcription factors will last for hours, days, and even weeks. So a single exposure to light can have long-lasting effects. As I said, this switch of glycolysis to oxidative phosphorylation is important for two reasons. One is that stem cells are activated. Stem cells in their hypoxic niche carry out glycolysis, but when the mitochondria are activated, they need oxygen, so they have to get out of their niche when they can undergo proliferation and differentiation programs. The second effect of this glycolysis to OXPHOS switch is anti-inflammatory. So macrophages have an M1 phenotype and a pro-inflammatory carry out glycolysis. When OXPHOS is activated, they switch to the M2 anti-inflammatory phenotype. And if these happen to be microglia in the brain, they can undergo phagocytosis, for instance, disposing of amyloid plaque that clogs up the brain tail. But we did discover quite a few interesting things about how shining light on the head has beneficial effects. And we've summarized them in this diagram here. So there's a lot of different processes here, and there is positive evidence for all of them, actually.
As such, this will help with both hair loss and hair graying. It also activates the cellular cleanup portion of energy production within mitochondria, so it will help the hair from bleaching from hydrogen peroxide in the first place. One of the main device types that you'll find for phototherapy is red light helmets. Like castor oil though, this is more of a preventative than a curative. They're also rather overpriced, and you can easily just use the standard cheap LED device instead. And you can do the castor oil and the phototherapy at the same time and get even more result. Methylene blue is an interesting substance that allows mitochondria to produce ATP directly without creating any ROS at all. This is an amazing ability that completely skips this damaging aspect of energy production. Keep in mind though that you can only take so much before you get negative side effects, so you can't become immortal this way by building all of your energy in this fashion that's totally clean and pure. It also temporarily stains the skin blue. However, I've been adding a few milligrams to my baths along with a cup of white vinegar, and my skin has been doing very well since I started this. You don't even need to have the expensive stuff for this. Even the aquarium stuff will be perfectly fine for this purpose, and it's not enough to turn your skin blue. It's just gonna have a little bit of effect internally in the cell without much externally. You'll get a lot more concentrated into the skin this way, so it's worth looking into for the prevention of graying and hair loss as well. And I always wash my hair with a little vinegar and a tiny amount of methylene blue. It's not enough to change the color from the dyeing, but it is, I hope, enough to do something on a cellular level to keep it from getting grayer and keep it from falling out. I've also found this helps a great deal with psoriasis. When I have a little flare up, I just brush a little methylene blue on, and like magic, the skin stops peeling. Of course, it is blue afterwards, so keep that in mind. I also put vinegar in the bath and wash my hair with it. And it's the same basic idea as methylene blue. It essentially provides free energies to the cell, which helps clean up ROS and prevent insulin resistance in cells. Large amounts will bleach your hair, but a cup of white vinegar added to a bath water isn't going to have this effect. I also feel like my skin is much softer since I've been doing this. Alpha-ketoglutarate protects your stem cells from damage, and as we age, the levels within cells invariably declines. Therefore, it's highly recommended for everyone to take some alpha-ketoglutarate. I take 3 grams of arginine alpha-ketoglutarate per day, and it doesn't matter what kind of alpha-ketoglutarate you take. I just take that one because it's cheap. And you can see that in the description. I've got affiliate links there if you're interested. And I also describe exactly how to take it because people ask me that literally every video. Just look in the description, it's right there. Taurine and glycine protect your mitochondria, which in turn protects you from ROS production and from stem cell damage. I take 6 grams a day of each, and most people today are deficient compared to people 100 years ago because we no longer tend to eat the whole animal as we used to. If you want to slow aging and keep your hair youthful, taurine and glycine are a must. Taurine has also been shown to stimulate hair growth directly and is required for all protein synthesis, growth, and healing in the body. It's also shown to extend lifespan in animals by about 25%, so considering how cheap it is, there's really no reason not to take it. L-cysteine is the active ingredient in NAC, and it also helps with hair growth and also with combating hair loss and stem cell damage and much more. And it's also required to make glutathione, so it's going to help a lot with cleaning up the ROS that your body produces. I take 1 gram a day, but you could probably go even higher on this. Essential oils like cinnamon oil and rosemary oil also combat hair loss and can even stimulate new hair growth to at least some extent. Ginseng extract is also shown to have positive effects on your hair. Electrolyte balance also plays a role in hair loss, especially magnesium, and in hair graying even more so. If you have a plant-heavy diet, it might be smart to supplement some magnesium and also some zinc, or to try some magnesium oil in your hair and see if it gets any better. Green tea can also help prevent gray hair, but be aware that every tea bag has several milligrams of fluoride in it, and green tea is even worse than black tea, so it's probably not worth it to take the green tea. Saturated fats from coconut oil or tallow can also have positive effects on your hair and skin, whether you take them internally or externally. This can help prevent damage on a cellular level, which is what leads to these issues in the first place. On top of this, stearic acid from dairy and beef actually increases mitochondrial function, which means it can actually reverse some of this damage. Both scalp massage and needling have both been shown to help as well, probably by stimulating blood flow to the affected areas and also stimulating healing factor production. The idea of needling is similar to a method used for lame horses in the olden days, where they would use a hot iron to sear a horse near the crippled limb. This would cause the body to invoke a massive immune response in the area, and as a byproduct, the tendon damage in the leg would also be healed. No pain, no gain, as they say, but I don't really recommend trying this at home, and definitely not on a horse either, because you'll probably wind up in jail today. Cortisol is the main culprit in both hair loss and graying hair by causing stem cell pool depletion. While stress can increase cortisol, it is mainly a high insulin diet that drives chronically high cortisol levels over time. Catalase is often promoted as the solution for gray hair, but not only is cortisol a bigger issue than reduced catalase with age, but glutathione is much more important for cleaning up ROS in the body. The best way to increase glutathione levels is a low-carb, high-protein diet and supplementing glycine, taurine, and L-cysteine. And eating veggies is not going to help you with this at all. It's going to hurt you in most cases. The most important way to avoid this issue is through fasting and dietary change. Fasting 24 hours reduces insulin levels to 40% of your starting level on average, and over time this is going to make your cortisol levels drop down to nothing. While the big benefits from fasting come with the 36 to 96 hour fast, some intermittent fasting can help a great deal in this respect. It also helps you break your carb addiction, which is the main reason people have issues with controlling their hunger. Phototherapy, methylene blue, castor oil, essential oils like rosemary and cinnamon, magnesium oil and ginseng, green tea, saturated fats in the diet and topically, alpha-ketoglutarate, and taurine and glycine, and a lot of the other supplements that I recommend, which are in the description, can also help with these issues, especially in prevention. Artificial shampoo, a bad diet, and chemical exposure can wreak havoc on your hair. Ideally, you would use an all-natural shampoo, which is something I plan to explore in the future. You'd also keep your insulin low at all times, take the appropriate supplements, and get plenty of phototherapy everywhere you want your skin and hair to be healthy. Tallow, castor oil, and coconut oil on the scalp will also help you to be your best self and to keep your hair young and healthy as long as possible.
Anyway, the ship is here. You better come along.
Hey, mate, you ever thought about having layers put in your hair?
Vince, no.
Could I get a mullet?
The mullet? I invented the mullet.
Primo.